Hi, I'm Lizzie,
And I'm Brenda.
and welcome back to Small Step Society. Episode 5, Self-Love, Part 1, Embracing Your Uniqueness.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Hey y'all.
Hello.
Welcome back to another great, awesome, epic episode.
I'm very excited for this one.
Yeah? Well, before we get into that, we need to do our weekly segment, Song of the Moment. So, what's your song of the moment?
My song of the moment is Out of the Woods by Taylor Swift. Yeah. What's your song of the moment?
Wildin' 'Cause I'm Young by Kid Cudi.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very different from your music taste, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. But I feel like that's what makes our little friendship so fun, is because we like have our unique little things that we like, but we can still come together in like a harmonious, pun intended, because it's about music.
Harmonious? You mean like...
Well,
Well, that wasn't very unique. Let's try it again. 3, 2, 1. Beautiful. Yeah, anyway.
our
Very
little harmonious relationship, friendship that we have.
Yeah, so with that, I mean, we should talk about uniqueness and embracing it, because that's what creates beauty
And diversity in this world.
and just good things in life.
Yes.
So, let's get started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with the uniqueness, I think it's so cool to be different.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you think of somebody, you think of the things that make them unique.
Yeah, like their distinctive characteristic, per se.
Yeah, like someone's unique laugh,
Mm-hmm.
their unique attitude,
For sure.
their unique interests, their unique hobbies, their unique...
Like a personality, how they approach people, how they
Mhm.
present themselves.
Even their unique physical characteristics.
I know what you're saying about the unique physical features, because I know someone who's a brunette, but she has this streak of blonde hair in the back, and it's so cool. And it's just natural. She was born with the blonde streak, and it just hasn't gotten darker yet. Or like it might never, but I think it's so cool. And I'm like, that's a really unique characteristic of someone.
Yeah. Even like different eye colors.
Yeah.
And it sucks because people, I feel like when they see it on themselves, they're like, I look different from people. But that's so cool. Like, I don't know, it makes you stand out, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think anyone's usually looking at it and being like,
Right. But we do acknowledge that if you are living in a community where there isn't a lot of diversity, equity, and like inclusion, it's harder to embody your uniqueness, just because it's not super, I guess, socially accepted. We're like accepted by other members of your community.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll get into this. Like, society is a huge contributor to why people aren't able to accept their uniqueness and maybe see it as a bad thing.
But in general, I think diversity is so beautiful.
Yeah. And that also, with that, even if you are in a maybe not as diverse community, just because it is socially, maybe, what's the word?
Uncommon.
Yeah, socially uncommon doesn't mean you shouldn't embrace your diversity. You still should. With that, with the topic of society is the fact that humans are socially conditioned beings. Everything eventually goes out of style. For example, in the early 2000s, low-rise jeans were in style. Then they became out of style. And high-rise jeans were in style. And now, low-rise jeans are coming back.
So true.
So what's the point? If you like the low-rise jeans, you should have just worn them.
Yeah, same with like baggy jeans, the flares, bell bottoms. Yeah, they're just coming back. Along with a more physical appearance and like fashion style of social conditioning, in quotes, I think come more like ideas and intellectual thoughts, I guess. For example, school, though it is supposed to like help you be creative and like expand your intellect.
Yeah, expand your horizons.
Yeah, I do think when you're in grade school, you're kind of in this mold and like everyone's learning the same thing, even if they're not super passionate about it, especially up until you become an upperclassman in high school. You have to ask for permission to do anything, including using the restroom.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I think social conditioning is more about your beliefs and your thoughts, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So I guess how that relates to uniqueness is like you're basically just forced to conform, and it's kind of like normalized basically in elementary school, middle school, high school even.
and you want to fit in with other people. So I think you kind of let go of what makes you to fit in with other people.
And I mean, that's why teenagers have such a tough time.
Yes,
and
for sure.
they want to fit out all the time because that's kind of, I guess, just like a given with school.
Yeah.
I feel like there is, actually, I don't know if this is true, but I feel like there are like studies of homeschool people that maybe have a higher self-esteem because of that. Of course, because of social media, which we'll also get into.
Yeah.
That maybe is not as, that is, I guess, frowned upon more, like being homeschooled, because then once homeschool people enter like quote unquote normal society, they're looked at as weird.
Yeah, no, I was just about to say that, because I think in social media, on TikTok or whatever, the whole thing is that if you're homeschooled, you're weird.
I know.
And like if there's something that is a little different, they're like, oh, that makes sense because you're homeschooled.
Yeah, but low-key, if you're homeschooled, you're probably being more authentic to yourself.
Yes.
Because you're not having your mind or like your social being infiltrated by all these other outside sources.
Yeah.
I mean, homeschool people have friends, so
Yes.
there's still some aspect of that, but it's different.
Yeah, but I saw this somewhere. I really liked this, but I guess one of the songs, like a lyric where the title of a Pink Floyd song is like another brick in the wall.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they're saying like school makes children to be just another brick in the wall.
Oh my god, that's so true.
Yeah, which I thought was it's a fairly good point.
Yeah. Oh, I was doing a reading for class the other day, and they were talking about how when you enter college, your self-esteem just plummets. But then by the time you get out of college, studies have shown that your self-esteem is much higher than it was before you even entered college, which makes a lot of sense, because in like grade school, you're conditioned to act a certain way. Society is just thrown at you, and you just input all of that and output whatever society is telling you to do. And then you enter college, and you have so much more freedom. You can do whatever you want. You can dress how you want. You can say whatever you want, mostly. And
take classes that are more specialized to your interests.
Yeah. Like you can explore everything, and then you have so many choices that it becomes, it makes your self-esteem, I guess, go down because
you're just navigating a new...
Yeah, and you feel uncertain, you feel unsure, all of the above. But then when you exit, it's because like you finally found yourself. You found, like, through those 4 years, you found the type of people that you actually belong with, and your interests, and really just everything. Yeah.
But obviously not everything that you believe in, not everything you do, or like how you look is from social conditioning, but in like a general majority sense is what we're referring to.
Yeah. I hate when people, like, if I do something new, like if I keep like saying something, like if I don't know, I feel like every other week I have some kind of new saying that I keep saying. But I hate when people are like, oh, who'd you pick that up from? And I'm like, I don't know.
My brain.
Yeah, my brain's unique. We can do cool new things.
Yeah.
But on the topic of school, actually, it's also hard to accept ourselves, because when we start school, and I think we talked about this in a previous episode.
I do think so too, yeah.
But when you start school when you're 5, and you immediately get measured by how well you do in a class and tests and all of that. And I've said it and I'll say it again. I hate that tests are what define you, because people, like, there's so much, and I mean, with modern psychology and studies and all of that coming out, I think tests are maybe becoming less prevalent as like that sole measure of how well you're doing as a student. But generally speaking, like, tests are what measure, I guess, your intellect and
like your place in society.
Yeah, like a ranking in high school. Which I mean, it's just horrible for how people view themselves, because especially when, like, in high school, like, rankings just displayed everywhere.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
Yeah. And I feel like even when you get to college, the first year, it follows you around for no good reason. Yeah. It definitely diminishes, like, as you go along in college, but the first year, I think
people are still, like, transitioning.
Very interested in how you did in high school.
Yeah.
Along the lines of grades defining us in grade school, it's midterm season for us, and there's a lot of tests, a lot of paper, lots going on. So we have a quote in our room, in our dorm, that says, your academic accomplishments do not define you. You are more than that.
Yeah, and it's really good to have that reminder, because when you're stressed, like you just revert to that high school version of yourself being like, I need to get 100 on this test, or else I'm a failure. But you're not.
You're not. With that, it's common to think that there's always someone who's better than you, but also someone who's worse than you, because you're so used to comparison starting in grade school.
Yeah, like you're always trying to place yourself. Like you're trying to figure out your place in society. Comparison's arbitrary. It's qualitative. It's not like a quantitative thing. You can't just like put your finger on it and be like, I'm objectively better than this person, or I'm objectively worse than this person. And usually it's based on outdated methods.
Yep.
Going back to the school example, SATs, ACTs, all of those standardized exams. How well you do on the SAT has been a measure historically of whether you're going to get into college. Like colleges have weighted that so heavily in the process. And I mean, even with that, like the number, like the cutoff, or what it's called, like the number you have to get has changed. Like they change the scale all the time. But I guess in the past few years, colleges have stopped beginning to consider it necessary. Like it's been optional, or they've stopped weighting it as highly in applications, because it's now being seen as an unfair measure of judgment. Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of external factors that aren't considered when we just put students by numbers and like compare them as numbers.
Yeah, like a personal example was I studied for months for the SAT. And I mean, I got a good score. It wasn't as high as I had hoped. And then because I'd been getting really good scores at home doing the practice test, then I go there, take the test, and I guess it was stress or something. I mean, obviously, could just be the exam. But I got a lower score than I'd been consistently getting at home. Then I applied to all the colleges. There was like some kind of like technical, like my school, they had some problem with my grades, whatever. I ended up having to take the ACT to get some credit. That's not important. But I took the ACT after colleges, everything was done. I never studied for the ACT, did not know anything about it.
Oh no.
And the funny thing is, I had like all the information that I needed to know. Like I learned everything I needed to know because, you know, school does that. Took the ACT, got a higher score compared to
the SAT.
Yeah, the SAT. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
It's such a contextual thing, and that's why I've always been like, why standardized tests just don't make sense. Point being, it's very subjective, and it just goes to show that you can't put a number to your success or how well you're doing. And I mean, I guess the bottom line is measuring yourself against a modern standard isn't helping you, because I mean, most of these things, like forms of measuring yourself or forms of ranking yourself, they're just another trend. But going, I guess, less off of those, like socially presented objective methods, which they're not objective. There's also like those more subjective things that we kind of just do qualitatively judge ourselves. Social media, I think, is a huge contributor to this, because if you go on social media, if you scroll, everyone's happy, everyone's smiling, everybody's in some sunny place.
Yes.
Or laughing with their friends, having a good time. Real life is not like that.
I agree.
Real life is so unbelievably not like that. I mean, you can even just take our podcast. I'll tell you right now, we're so stressed.
Are we?
We have a lot going on. I'll say that. We've been so tired this entire week. So unenergetic, but
yeah, I think both of us barely made it here from today. So.
Yeah. But here we are, smiling and having fun, and we are having fun, to be honest.
That's true.
But you know what I mean? Like, it's just a gallery of everyone's good moments, because why would you want to post the bad moments? You know, especially if society looks at that, they'll be like, "Oh, you're crazy. Why are you sad? Be grateful." So people just post all their best things, but in reality, we all want what we can't have. Yeah. And it's just silly to compare yourself to people on social media.
Yeah. I've said this a couple times, but social media with the day in the life, where like come like average Monday of a med student or average Monday of a pre-law student, and they go to the gym, they make beautiful, delicious meals. They study for 2 hours and miraculously get all their work done. They hang out with friends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they like work. And I'm like, how do you do this all? Like,
Uh-huh.
whoa.
And they look like perfectly fine.
Yeah. And
they
they
look so put together.
And they get 8 hours of sleep. And I was like, what? There's only 24 hours in a day. How does that work? So I think those get me. I'm like, wow, they live life so effortlessly.
Yeah. And especially when you're like mindlessly scrolling content, it's so easy to just look at that and be like, oh my God, I'm such a failure.
Like, I should be more like that.
Yeah. Even if you're taking like, even if that's your 10-minute break between doing things in your life, you're still like, oh my God, I'm wasting 10 minutes. Why am I so bad at this and they're so good at it? But
yeah.
You guys are being silly.
Yeah. But comparison just gets you out of nowhere.
Yeah. You know the saying, the grass is always greener on the other side.
True.
But the grass is always greener on the other side. I mean, that comes with the general concept of comparison. So let me just give you a little example of why comparison is silly. So there's this study that I love in psychology. Basically, there was this researcher named Franz de Waal, maybe, I think that's how you pronounce it, from Emory University. And he conducted a study on monkeys, which, if you don't know, in science, monkeys are used a lot for research on humans because we have very similar brain functions and generally our behaviors are the same.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a pair of monkeys that was given stones every now and then. Whenever the monkeys gave the stone to an experimenter, they would receive a cucumber.
Mm-hmm.
Yum. Great snack. They love the cucumber.
Mm-hmm.
Then, so let's say we're the monkeys.
Okay.
Just for the sake of this.
Mm-hmm.
So we're both getting our cucumbers. We're loving it. We're having a great time.
Mm-hmm.
Then you start giving your stone to the experimenter and they start giving you grapes.
Wow.
And you love grapes. I
Mm-hmm.
love grapes too, but I actually love the cucumbers better.
Okay.
Then suddenly this monkey, the monkey who's still just getting the cucumber,
Mm-hmm.
they started getting jealous. They like went crazy. They were like, oh my God, why is this other monkey getting grapes and I'm only getting cucumbers?
Mm-hmm.
The grape getting the monkeys that were getting the grapes, they didn't get happier, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like they were just same basic reward mechanism. Meanwhile, the cucumber monkeys got jealous. They became fixated on this grapes. They didn't even care about the cucumber. Isn't that funny? Like, it's amazing how your perspective suddenly shifts just because someone else is getting something that's just different and you're not. Like, it seems like favoritism to you, but maybe the experimenter thinks that you actually hate grapes and that's why they're giving it to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about perspective. Point being, don't be the monkey. Don't go banana. Pun intended. Yeah, don't be the monkey who gets fixated on those grapes. Just be happy with what you have, you know? As humans, we're always wired to want more, and I mean that can serve as some great purposes, you know, because that's what leads us towards our goals. But yeah. On the topic of being wired to always want more, I mean that's a biological thing. So in neuroscience, this is a really psychological neuroscience heavy episode, but this neuroscience Jaak Panksepp, I don't know how to pronounce his name, I'm sorry, but he argues that there's 7 core instincts in the human brain. There's anger, fear, panic, grief, maternal care, pleasure, play, and seeking.
Okay.
He argues that out of those 7 core instincts, seeking is the most important. We're always looking towards a goal, looking towards success, looking towards something better.
Mm-hmm.
We're always wired to want more.
Mm-hmm. I think humans are wired to want more because life is constantly changing and we need to like adapt and adjust to this life that we're living in.
Evolution.
Yeah, but because when we accomplish a goal or accomplish something, we get this instant serotonin boost. And as time goes by, it kind of fades. And then we get stuck in this cycle called the hedonic treadmill.
Oh, okay.
Where we get the boost and then it fades and then you look for something else to accomplish. And then you get the boost and then it fades. So that's like constant.
Yeah,
like a
vicious cycle.
Yeah, vicious cycle. Comes back, right? Yeah, and then the other thing is called paradox of choice. So when you have all these choices and you make one, you're left with all these other choices that you didn't make. And then you kind of question what life would have been if you had made the other choice. And you kind of like question and you doubt your choice. And then that kind of leads to like unhappiness of some sorts. And like, I wish I could have more. Like, I wish I could change time, or like I wish I could have a parallel life. Like,
yeah, I think that's actually why people, that I just thought about this, but I think this might be why like people are so fascinated by the idea of like multidimensional worlds, like being able to cross over, because they're like, oh my god, what if my life would be so much better in the other life? But if you really think about it, would you really want that? Like, it's one thing to be sad right now thinking about what life could be, but what if you actually went there for a day, found out that your life was so much better then, and came back? Like, it would be so miserable. So what's the point of even thinking about that, you know?
That's true.
You're not getting anywhere with it anyway.
I think kind of off of that, this I think can feed into being the superhuman, like the self-sabotage thing that we talked about last week, because you want to do everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to have the doubt
of
like, what if I didn't do this one?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Actually, that's so true.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
We're like coming to revelations like as we're talking.
Yeah.
But
no, that's definitely true. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool concept to think about.
Yeah.
Very wild.
I mean, I think also like people are always like, go for the thing that you like. If you're thinking, should I do it, should I not, go for it, because you'll keep thinking what if.
Yes.
And so I mean, there are pros to doing that, but if you can't like take it too far and overbook yourself, because I mean that leads to stress, that leads to sadness, to be honest.
Yeah, talking about self-esteem, and since our episode is about embracing our uniqueness, I wanted to kind of talk about the self-acceptance part of it as well. So self-esteem and self-acceptance are very interconnected and very similar, I think, but more specifically, self-esteem is the confidence you have in your abilities, like your strengths. And self-acceptance is accepting your strengths and your weaknesses, like you yourself as a whole.
Yeah.
So I guess on our broad topic, uniqueness, this relates because you might see your uniqueness as a strength or a weakness, but either way, it's part of you, and it's good. Like
that's what makes you special. Yeah.
Yes, and that's what makes you such a beautiful part of this world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, your weaknesses can help other people too. You know what I mean? Like it's all, we're all interconnected, we're all interrelated. So,
and like you might think it's a weakness, but to other person it might be your best trait.
Yeah. So
I guess this is kind of like a comparison thing.
Yeah, it's subjective.
Yeah.
Again, with comparison and competing with others, I came across this really interesting quote by Koshin Ogui. Is that right? I have no idea. From this book that he wrote called Zenshin Talks. So Zenshin is a meditative practice that combines the principles of Shin Buddhism with Zen practices of Mahayana Buddhism. Basically, just two different types of Buddhism, and it kind of combines different parts of both. So what I wanted to touch on from the Zen portion of that was part of the Zen philosophy is this denial of the ego. And that might seem weird to bring into this episode because we are discussing how you should love yourself, which is maybe misconstrued as having an ego. But, okay, having an ego usually means having like an overinflated sense of self-esteem or self-importance. So basically what I'm trying to say, okay, let me backtrack. So self-love just means that you are practicing, you have self-acceptance, whereas having that ego means that you're overdoing that, which is why Zen philosophy denies that ego. You don't need to put other people down to accept yourself. You should be accepting everyone too. And I think that's important. But anyway, this quote. So he says, a flower does not think of competing with the other flower next to it. It just blooms. Which I think is it's such a wise, concise, accurate quote. Comparing yourself to others will stunt your growth. I mean, a large part of, people say survival of the fittest. Yes, competition is healthy. I mean, without competition, to a certain level, it's more difficult to work hard, like stay productive, improve overall, because you don't have anything to like overcome or like beat in a sense. But that competition should only be a tiny part of your life, because I think when if that's the only thing that's driving your goals and prospective success, that will never be enough, and it'll often be your downfall. Because think about it, what if the person that you're competing with in your mind, like they become so far out of reach because you just have a different timeline different timeline from them, like suddenly you'll lose all motivation when in reality you had that potential all along. You just needed it to be an internal motivation and not like motivated by other people. Or alternatively, what if they experience a setback and they're not able to do the thing that you're competing against them with? And then you lose all motivation because you're like, oh well, they're not able to do it, I guess that means I'm not. Like you're just like comparing yourself to others and then holding yourself back, basically. So I would say, just like that flower, focus on the journey and the individual progress you're making, because not only will you not always feel like you're falling behind, like you'll actually feel like you're growing, but you'll also unlock a new perspective on life that only you can have, because you're having your own experiences and you're reflecting on them with your own perspective, your own values, and just bringing that into light, which is so special and so different from everyone else around you. Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely experience this.
Yeah, I would say from my perspective, we're pretty good flowers that are next to each other.
Yeah.
Because we spend a lot of time with each other. We interact a lot. Obviously, we live together. We have a podcast together.
Yeah.
But even though we're physically next to each other, we don't do the things that are very similar.
Yeah, like we do very different things outside from the podcast.
Like our interests, some of them are the same because we are very...
I mean, yeah, it would be weird if we were friends and we had none of the same interests.
And like we are advocating for like harder social topics to be heard, and like mental health and stuff. But like Brenda has her own interests. I have my own interests. We do very different extracurriculars. I think more specifically, I do a lot more pre-med stuff and a lot of more things that interact with children. And also I am now involved in like a consulting club, so more dipping my toes in business as well. But I think Brenda does like foreign policy.
Yeah, I do marketing now. I work in a lab.
Yeah.
Really just random stuff. But
yeah,
well, like we do very different things, and instead of like competing with each other, I think we celebrate each other's successes. Like when you got into the consulting group, that was so amazing. And I was so happy for you. I wasn't like,
like I need to do consulting.
Yeah, I need to do consulting.
Yeah, I think we're blooming next to each other.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, we still draw inspiration from each other.
Yeah.
Like, you started talking about doing a business minor. I'm like, that'd actually be really cool because I'm focusing on marketing.
Yeah,
and like you're focusing on a different part of business.
We have experience.
Yeah.
And I think business teaches you a lot of good soft skills. Sorry, this is a topic. But
yeah, but the point is, like, we're not competing with each other. We're looking at each other's successes and thinking, wow, that's really cool. I want to do it, but not because I want to like beat you or I'm like feel like I'm falling behind, because I'm like, oh, I never thought about that, because I'm getting your perspective, your unique perspective, and I'm thinking, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So that's more of like we're physically next to each other and we don't compete example. But I also wanted to talk about how you can maybe be in like the same kind of field as somebody and still not compete with them. So I'm majoring in BCN at the University of Michigan, which is biopsychology, cognition, neuroscience. In case you can tell, I'm into psychology. But another person who lives with us, she's also a BCN major, but we have very different goals. So she's more on a pre-med track, taking all those like really like core natural science classes, whereas I'm more on a pre-law track / business, figuring it out. But neither of us compare ourselves with each other. Like we just do what we're doing and we have a great time doing it, and it's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, like, it's also I guess with that, every time I tell people I'm a BCN major, I always get the question, are you pre-med? And I'm like, no. And you know what? I definitely hated saying that at first, because I was like, oh my god, I need to be pre-med. But I've learned to like really love being completely different in what I'm doing from BCN, and yeah, like and okay. On the topic of competition, when I'm entering fields like marketing or whatever it may be that's like quote unquote not BCN related, now it actually is really cool to like bring that new perspective and be like, I'm special. I get to like, I bring such a unique perspective to this club because I'm BCN, because I'm not business, because I'm not foreign policy related. I'm completely different, and that's beautiful.
Yes. That's like also the diversity factor. Like you can bring in your unique perspective from what you're interested in, what you're learning. And yeah, more diversity. Kind of like supporting your individuality comes with setting standards per se. I think it's very common to have double standards, one for others and one for yourself, and you put yourself up on a higher standard. And like you always see the best in other people. You like kind of cherry pick their best qualities, but you don't do that for yourself.
Yeah.
So like why the double standard? We're all people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if someone came to you with a struggle, you wouldn't like be like, oh no, you can't feel like that. You can't, like, you have to minimize your feelings. But like when you're feeling that, you feel like other people don't feel that way. So
you always like shut down your feelings.
Right.
But then you're like, no, everyone else should have those feelings. And it's fine. It's so weird.
Yeah. So I think keeping that in mind too, like have one standard for all of us, and I don't know, be kinder to yourself.
Yeah, and let the standard just be acceptance, being kind, being empathetic, being who you are. And with that, being who you are, like, I think a large part of it is the introspection quality, as always. Get to know yourself. Learn what makes you tick, what makes you diverse, what makes you you, and embrace it. Love it. Think, wow. Think about all the good qualities or like the good parts of what makes you unique. And maybe realize, hey, I've been beating myself up about this and how I am maybe worse at this topic or this interest of mine than other people. And then think, but I've come so far. I've done so well in this, and this has helped me grow in this way. And just discover that whole new journey of self-acceptance.
Yeah.
And I would say, before that next episode, because of course it's a mini-series, so very related episode, I would suggest joining us and reflecting and learning about yourself, and maybe think about the question, what does self-love mean to you?
Yeah. Yet again, as we wrap up our episode, we are not experts in any of this topic.
Yeah, I mean, you saw us come to so many realizations.
Yeah. We do a lot of research, so as we did our research, we've consulted sources like Psych Central, Healthline, and Health Digest to define concepts that we are not as familiar with.
Yeah, and that has definitely helped our research and our ideas on this episode grow. Yes. But I guess with that, think about self-love, think about what makes you you, and we'll see you next Sunday.
Yeah.
And as always, you can find our lovely faces on YouTube, or you can listen to the audio version of us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and wherever you can find podcasts except where you cannot.
Bye.
Bye.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.